welcome to the Total Country Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Total Country Podcast. My name's Kevin and thanks for joining me. My guest this week is Canadian songstress Joey Clarkson. Joey hails from Vancouver Island, Canada, but moved to London in 2016 after a stint travelling Europe and hasn't looked back since. She was quickly accepted into the UK country music community and has had an extremely successful last 12 months, including releasing a brand new concept album in November of 2019, a duet with the brilliant Louise Parker, and she's most recently released the song she wrote for her wedding for the father-daughter dance. Joey offers a mature slice of Americana country and she takes her music very seriously, as you'll hear in this interview. I don't want to over-explain this one, so let's go straight into it. This is my sit-down with Joey Clarkson. I am on the line with Joey Clarkson. Joey, how are you? You all right?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. So I've got to start with the question that Brits I think I've replaced with what's the weather like. How have the past few months been treating you?
I have actually been really enjoying myself. I mean, obviously I miss my friends and I miss my family, and I miss not having the opportunity to have my family here because my Canadian family was supposed to spend a month with us throughout quarantine before any of this happened. So obviously the trips were canceled. Aside from that, I've been really enjoying having more time to focus on music. And I mean, obviously it's a bit of a struggle and a bit stressful because of finances and having to stay alive, but it's not really anything I haven't had to deal with stress wise in the past being a musician. So I think it's been really nice to have the time to just focus on new music and putting in a strong foundation of kind of how we want our lives to be for the next couple of years. Yeah, no, absolutely.
You recorded and released a single with the amazing Louise Parker, didn't you? During this,
did.
So it's called If You Want Me. Explain it, because I spoke to Louise a couple of weeks ago and I love the story of how this all came together.
Yeah, so If You Want Me To is a song that we co-wrote on the first day we actually met in person, and it wasn't a song we anticipated that we were going to write. We kind of thought we were going to write something that was a little bit more heavy-hitting and a bit more about kind of what was going on in the world. I think we even touched briefly on possibly writing about like Australian forest fires and kind of fire-themed music. Wow. And then when we picked up an instrument, none of that fell out. And Louise is amazing to write with. And she is definitely like, I'm so happy I have her as a friend now, because she is that yes friend. And I've always been that yes friend. So like an idea starts rolling, and instead of shutting it down because we had a different idea in the first place, we just rolled with the one that started to flow. And this song literally fell out in I think it was just over an hour from start to finish. And we had this song that it was great because the concept didn't even exist to us before we picked up the instruments. So it was amazing.
And you kind of put it all together while Louise was working for the NHS as well, didn't you? It was kind of like a gift to her, is how she explained it to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did. We put it together while she was doing a lot of work with the NHS, actually. She was quite busy, I think, because she was picking up different shifts and working quite a bit. But we put it together with Ryan John Griffiths, who is a producer, and he was working out of his home studio as well. So, sorry, forgive me if there's a bit of sound in the background. That's me closing the windows because I've realized my street is a bit louder than I thought.
You've bagged yourself, I saw on Twitter, if people don't follow you on Twitter, you're pretty interesting because you post a lot. And
Thank you.
There's lots of opinions and stuff on there. So if people want to get more of a kind of more of your personality vibe, have a look on Twitter. It's a mix of pretty things and rants and music.
I do put a lot of rants on there.
Love a rant. So I saw you've bagged yourself a little bit of a shoe deal as well, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Talk to me about that.
So I think I'm pronouncing this properly. I need to hear an actual Austrian say the name, but I think it's Geisbein. And they're an Austrian shoe company, and they work with merino wool, and they've created a production style that when they produce the wool, they actually produce 0% waste from the wool
Oh, wow.
product, which is incredible because apparently when you manufacture wool regularly, there's about a 20% waste for the material that's used. So they don't actually have any physical waste from the wool, which is amazing. And they also recycle 90% of their water. So their shoes are like incredibly eco-friendly, and they just have a very I really like their ethos. I love that. It's well made. They're really cute. They're very comfortable. And they were looking to expand their brand. And I was just lucky enough to kind of get involved with that, because I think if I might have been a bit more hesitant to jump on board if I hadn't been offered the chance to give away some free shoes to my audience, because I don't want to ever really like spam my audience with just, here's a product, go buy it. But the fact that I get to give away something to someone in the audience, that's great. So I'm excited for that.
Is that eco kind of just thing something that's really important to you then? Is that? Yeah,
I've always thought it was really important, but in recent years, one of the biggest changes I've noticed from moving from Canada to the UK is just how much more packaging there is in the UK. And it's really big. Like in Canada, our apples wouldn't be packaged ever in plastic. And here, sometimes apples come in like a plastic case where there's they're wrapped in plastic and wrapped in plastic again. And I moved over here and I got used to it being that way without even making any changes to make sure I was shopping for less plastic. And I started to realize just how much of a buildup we had and how much recycling we were contributing to. And I think it was recently, it's within the past year, we started making some big changes. And I think Riverford, which is a company that does 0% packaging, and they do deliveries and a lot of it's local. They offered some great boxes, and I stumbled across them last year, and we started changing that, and we noticed how we didn't have nearly as much waste. It was incredible. So we started making really healthy choices that way, started shopping at the local meat places. When we do eat meat, we cut back on meat for a lot of the meals. And it's really important to me, just seeing how much waste my husband and I can produce and thinking about that on a larger scale. It's just, we need to make some changes, I think. So
it's so weird. When I was growing up, going shopping with my dad and stuff wasn't in packaging like it is, and then everything got packaged, and then everyone's like, well, we're stopping using packaging. Like, this is how it always was. This isn't a new thing.
Absolutely.
Riverford have got an amazing kitchen restaurant in their farm. If you do ever get to go down there, it's very good.
I want to go down there really badly. I'm doing a little bit of a collaboration with Riverford as well. They're doing these veg hack videos where you have to try and make these meals. And so they reached out to me the other day, and they're sending us a big veg box, and we're getting to do one of these veg hack meal plan things. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, when you get a chance and when it's safe and everything, get down there. It's all like family style. It's
that's
really
lovely.
Good. Really good. So let's go back in time. You're from Vancouver Island in Canada, as you mentioned, but you live in London now. So talk to me about growing up in Canada and how you ended up in London.
So growing up in Canada is amazing. I think it's phenomenal. It's just you're surrounded with so much space and so much nature, and I think the musical opportunities there are actually really great. There's a strong music community. Yeah. If you want to go more international, it's really hard to get out of Canada without physically getting out of Canada. Just with the way that our music is, how much influence our music has, and the fact that Canada a lot of the time gets lumped in with the States, and then the States just dominate the market. So it's really hard to kind of do that without leaving. But I loved growing up in Canada, and I would love to have a healthy balance between the two at some point, if that's ever possible, to be able to live in Canada for maybe 3 or 4 months of the year and then the rest of the time over here. I moved over to England in, 2016, permanently. Okay. And that was the year that I met my husband for the second time. We met briefly in 2012 at a gig, and then ran into each other outside of a bar on Christmas Eve in 2015. And after that, we fell in love very quickly. And then we decided, at that point, you kind of have to make the choice of, are we going to continue this relationship? Are we not going to continue this relationship? Because I was going back to Canada. Yeah. And we decided that it was worth giving shot. And so I got my work visa and I hopped on over, and I spent the majority of like a year and a half, 2 years back and forth. And then we got married, and I've kind of just been here since 2016. And I love it. I love it here. I think it's great. The music community here is so strong. I really, really love the country music community over here.
And you, am I right in thinking you grew up on a farm? Is that right?
I did. So I grew up on the corner of my grandma's farm, and my grandma has like this big beef and sheep farm. So
Wow.
A lot of cattle, a lot. And it's on 200 acres of land, which is incredible. And it's been in the family for over 140 years now, which doesn't sound like a long time over here, but in Canada terms, that is a long time.
Yeah.
So that's a heritage family farm in Canada, Glen Alwyn Farms. And we had, ours was more of a hobby farm, the farm on the side of the farm. So we had like chickens and ducks and stuff like that, but it was really fun. Did you
not feel compelled to stay and work on the farm or anything? Because these kind of stay in the family often, don't they?
Yeah, well, so it was my grandma's farm and my aunt's family. So we lived on the corner of the farm, and my aunt lived on the farm. So she has 4 kids, and they're all very passionate about farming. Given the chance, I would love to at some point move back and help out and experience more of that. But music for me has always been the strongest calling. Yeah. It's been the most important thing aside from my family. The most important thing I have. So music is definitely what I want to do. And in order to chase that properly, it makes more sense to be somewhere where it's financially feasible to tour, which is what the UK provides. And also just where there's a good, strong community. Yeah.
You mentioned your love of the Canadian music scene. Do you still feel quite connected to it? Is it something you like to stay in the loop with? Because I mean, the obvious one at the moment, a person to pick out, I suppose, is someone like Lindsay L, who's doing incredible things.
I would love to be more connected with the Canadian music scene. I think I've got some things coming up in the next year that I'm really excited about, that I'm partnering with more Canadians for. So I'm going to be releasing a single with a Canadian artist that's kind of like a collaboration, like what Louise and I did, but with a Canadian artist who is based in between Ontario and Nashville. And then I'm also going to be doing, this year I was supposed to be performing more in Canada. I was supposed to be playing a Cashbox Caravan at the Canadian Music Week. And I was supposed to also be playing some shows on the West Coast. Now, obviously that didn't happen because that was in the middle of this whole pandemic. So that's all been bumped to next year. And I'm really looking forward to spending a bit more time in Canada next year, kind of pursuing that and being more connected, because I think I would have been more connected and stayed more in touch with the Canadian music scene had I not experienced that year of immigration that was a total nightmare. So I dropped out for that year. About a year I stopped playing music and I didn't do anything really live, and I got into a down space, and I think that's where I kind of stopped focusing and I lost touch with a bunch of people. So nothing negative. It's just the way that time unfolded in that sense. So I'm hoping to get more connected.
Yeah, perfect. Did you find any sort of culture shock or major differences living in somewhere like London compared to in Canada?
There's a few. There was one major one. The one that I always tell people is clean, fresh water. That's the biggest difference that I notice here, because we grew up with our water source in the Comox Valley is from a glacier. And it's just it's stunning. I think you just take it for granted. You really take it for granted having that be your natural water resource. And then moving to a city, obviously the water is different and there's lots of lime buildup. But then also in the sense of going to a lake or a river, there's the quality of water, and it's just visibly less clean here than it is in Canada. I would never want to go to the Thames and stick my feet in it. But
they'll
down
fall off.
I would be worried. But on the island, we have got this beautiful river that runs through my hometown, and the thing everybody does in the summer is you get an inner tube, so like a tire tube, and you blow it up and you sit in the tube with a beer and you float down the river. And it's just, I cannot even picture doing that here. So I missed that. That was a big culture shock, the water.
Yeah, that's not even one I think about. Who were you listening to growing up then, Joey? Who was on your CD player or cassette deck?
Oh, so I went through so many different phases, but when I went through my vinyl stage, which I must have been like about 7 or 8, I had ABBA's greatest hits, and that was a huge part of my childhood,
Nice.
specifically the song Money. I thought the song Money was like the best song in the world, and I learned how to like lift the needle so I could listen to it on repeat. I also listened to a lot of the Spice Girls and Shania Twain and Dolly Parton. And then I went through a phase where I decided I didn't like country music, and that was a horrible time of my life. But I started listening to I love the artists that I was listening to, but bands like the Hush Sound, and then some local bands from around Vancouver and Vancouver Island, Hey Ocean and Current Swell and Half Moon Run. They're all great bands to look up and listen to. Not country themed, but they're great.
I love the fact you did the vinyl thing at 7. People do that at like 15, 16, don't they?
I know. I found the record player at a thrift shop, and it was like
Okay.
I don't know if we have Toys R Us over here, but it's like a kid's toy store. It was like a plastic record player, so it was specifically kid themed, but it was old, and my mom let me get it, and then we'd go and sift through records and listen, and she got rid of all of my records when I was like 13 because I got out of the record. I know, I stopped collecting them, and then she got rid of them, and I'm still quite mad about that.
No. She ruined your future nerding of like Bob Dylan records and stuff that could have happened.
Ridiculous. Well, we've got one now.
Okay, good. We did have Toys R Us over here, by the way. I think it went under like a few years ago, maybe.
Oh,
sadly.
no.
Yeah. My memories are walking around Toys R Us as well.
I loved walking around that store, but then thinking back to it, walking around Toys R Us, I was just surrounded by a bunch of stuff I didn't need that I would pester my mom to get me, so I can totally see how that would be a good thing to maybe close.
So let's talk about the new single then. Gonna Have This Dance, which features May Reid, that's how you say her name, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I'm
really
Dan
bad
Edwards.
with... Yeah, that's right.
I am. I love everything about this song. The way it was released, the sentiment, the story behind it, the whole lot. So for those that don't know, talk to me about how this song came to be.
So I always knew that I wanted to release a song for my dad. Whenever I got married, I knew I would want to release a song for my dad for a father-daughter dance. I just wanted to write him a song. And I tried to write it back in 2015, I think. And it was at a co-write in Los Angeles, and they were trying to think of ideas of kind of songs we could sing. My sister was there. And I said, what about a father-daughter dance song? Like, I feel like there aren't too many that are from the perspective of the daughter with a female voice singing them. I think it would be like a good thing to write and a good market. And I would love to write my dad one. And we started writing, but it was a bit too emotional and nothing really came from it. And then the co-writers were like, are you in a relationship where you're going to get married? And I was like, not right now. They're like, okay, let's not write this song. So we didn't write the song then. My sister and I had a good cry about it, though, because we just cried over how much we love my dad, which was very special.
Yeah.
And then when I met Peter, and after he, like almost instantly after he asked me to marry him, it was quite funny. He asked me to marry him, and like within like 6 hours, I was like, so are we doing it this year? Are we doing it next year? Like, there was no waiting around. I was like, so when's this going to happen? Like, we got to plan for this because I'm a planner. I like planning things. And so we decided on 2017. So it was only in 8 months between being engaged and getting married. Yeah. And at that point, it was like, I have to write my dad a song. And so I sat down periodically over those 8 months and tried to write my dad this song. And every time I picked up my guitar, I didn't even play chords without starting to cry because I was just thinking about my dad. And even just thinking about writing the song for my dad made me so emotional. Yeah. So it took me up until about, I think it was 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before the wedding. And I finally sat down and I got through it and I cried my way through it and I played it for Peter and I cried my way through it. And I managed to get one good take on my iPhone. And then I sent the copy to the wedding band and they learned it for our father-daughter dance so that we could dance to it. And that was lovely. And that was the first time my dad heard it. And it was a big surprise for him then as well. So he didn't know that I did that until the moment before we did our father-daughter dance. Luckily, the song's very honest. Dancing's really not my dad's thing, so there was no no rehearsal practice or dancing together, and he didn't pester me to figure out what our father-daughter dance song was going to be because he was probably dreading it. So, so it was easy to keep a surprise. So then we had this song, and that was like almost 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And my dad was supposed to, as I said, I was supposed to be performing in Canada, Canadian Music Week for Cashbox Caravan. And my dad had booked his flights to Toronto and then booked a flight from Toronto to London. And he was going to come to this music festival and watch me perform and then spend a week with me in Ontario with family. And then he was going to fly to London and spend like 2 weeks with me here. And obviously when that was canceled, everybody was really emotional. And that was right before his birthday. And I just thought, I've got to record this song. Like we've got all this time. Let's record Dad's song. Let's really for him, but let's keep the whole thing a secret. And so we managed to actually keep it a secret from my dad while posting about it a ridiculous amount online to keep people involved. And he had no idea, and it was great. And he definitely teared up and had to he was crying and I was crying, and we premiered it for him on Zoom as a surprise with a bunch of people involved as well. It was really beautiful, and we have that moment forever now, so it's great.
Yeah, I got invited to that Zoom, which I sadly couldn't make, but I've watched it a couple of times since, because it's up on YouTube, isn't it? And I don't know if I could have sat there, because do people listening, do go and see it? It's raw though, isn't it? Like you and Peter are sitting there, you're in tears, your dad's just like, mind just looks blown. He just looks in shock. It's very honest and raw, like lovely, but it's quite emotional, isn't it?
Oh, it's so emotional. I don't even think I was saying to somebody else the other day that I think we couldn't have asked for a better intro for my dad, because before we even got to tell him what was going on, right when we said hello, he just went straight into telling us about this present that my mom and my sister had gotten him, which is a fishing magnet. And he went off on like a 3.5 minute kind of rant about how awesome this fishing magnet was and how excited he was to go fishing with it. And I just thought, like, that's the perfect way to show how wonderful my dad is, because he's excited by a magnet. It was just like, it was so perfect for anybody who didn't know him. They got a chance to see the real version of my dad before we hit him with the big surprise and showed him the song and had that moment. And I think that just made it a bit more honest for people who didn't know my family before.
Yeah. Who came up with that idea of doing the sort of the release party in that way?
Oh, you know what? I've got to give all of that credit to Laura Jenkins of Your Forte. She did all of the PR on that. And when she came back to me, she's a very good friend of mine, and she came back to me with that idea about, it must have been a day before we decided to launch it, because she's like, I've got this idea. Wow. How do you feel about doing this? And I was like, I think that's a phenomenal idea. And we launched the campaign the next day. So it was not my big idea, Laura's big idea, and she just knocked it out of the park.
It's a great idea. Love it. It's perfect. Cool. So I want to talk about call it an album. Is it an album?
Yeah, I call it an album. Yeah. It might be cheeky, but I call it an album.
I can never decide what's an EP and what's an album anymore. It seems to.
I know.
It seems to change. Either way, regardless. For an independent artist, I love that you've released such a long play record, for one of old school things. Because especially as an independent artist, I don't think we need to beat about the bush. The sheer cost and expense of getting something like that off the ground. What made you want to get a full body of work out like that?
I've always been a fan of the full body of work. So I released my first album when I was 19, and that was a full album. And I released a second album when I was I was 24, I think it was in 2013. And I feel drawn to the albums. I like telling stories with them, but for this one in particular, the whole album was about the year I spent immigrating to the UK. So it was either songs that we wrote about the experience of immigrating after my visa was declined, or it was songs that were supposed to have been released in that year but never were released because we were immigrating and it cost a lot of money to immigrate. So making that album was more therapy, and the idea to make the experience into an album was actually one that came from, I kind of have to credit my friend Will. We went out for coffee and I was just complaining about everything. It was an absolute nightmare getting me to the UK to stay. And Will, at the end of listening to me rant, just said, Joey, one day you're going to look back and laugh at this as the year that never happened. And I just, as soon as he said the year that never happened, it kind of clicked for me. And I went, oh my God, that's an album title that I have to make. I have to make an album called this. And then the more I thought about it and I talked to Peter about it, we just thought, if we can do this, it's kind of like therapy, and it's kind of like moving through all of the emotions and wrapping everything up with a nice little bow and giving us closure at the end of the album. It's like, it's done, it's wrapped up, and now we've turned it into something beautiful that we can be proud of. And so now, instead of looking back at that year with hurt and disdain and just anger, I look back at it and I'm grateful because we were able to grow and we were able to produce something that has, even if it only had changed one other person's life, but I know it's changed more people's lives because more people have resonated with it. It's worth it. So it was worth the struggle. So it feels really good to have that as a body of work, and it felt right to release it as an album.
Yeah, absolutely. You could probably just follow up an album with the same title, part 2, after this year, I imagine.
It's ridiculous.
Where are I've lost my place on my questions. It's fine, just keep breathing. So that's talk to me about your songwriter then, and mainly let's go down your inspirations, because I'd be interested to know where you get your inspiration from, because to do a concept album, which is in theory what you've done there, that's not done much now, and that's like some Carole King Tapestry type stuff, isn't it? What are your inspirations?
I do love Carole King. I take inspiration, honestly, from a lot of people. I can't say I can credit any specific artist within like the popular music genre with why I chose to do it this way. I think the reason I chose to do it that way is probably my background in musical theater. So I've done a lot of musical theater in the past, and I think that's where my storytelling, I've always been drawn to like the idea of doing something like a concept album, because in musical theater, it is a concept album because there's a story arc to it. With this one, because it was about the year that never happened, I was very clear on wanting to start it starts with an interlude of the end song. So I wanted it to start from a place where it's like you're sitting back and you're reflecting on the entire year, but from start to kind of finish, and all of the emotions that are involved. And at the end of the album, I really wanted it to be final and to be locked into something positive, which is why it ends in major key, and why it just lifts at the very end, but only briefly at the very end. And so I think that inspiration was drawn from musical theater. But influence-wise, for other people, I listen to, honestly, more up-and-coming music than I do popular music and big artists. But recently, what we have going on in the house, and for this album, we were listening to Casey Musgraves. Yeah. We were listening to, I love Ward Thomas over here.
Great. Yep.
Just those two. Wildwood Kin. Who else? Well, we're listening to a lot of Half Moon Run right now, which they're a phenomenal band. Amazing harmonies. Going back to like my first inspirations for songwriting, I always say the first person who really inspired me to start writing was Ani DeFranco. And that's because she just kind of says what she wants to say when she wants to say it. And she doesn't really censor herself. And I always loved that. And moving forward with that theme, Lily Allen had a big, strong play into how I approached songwriting for a while. And then into I'm naming a lot of names right now. I'm sorry. I'm drawing with us. I guess a lot of people who just say what needs to be said without censoring it. Yeah. The honesty, which I think is why I came back to country music in the end, is because country music
seems
is
natural.
Honesty. Yeah.
Absolutely. Talk to me about your songwriter then. Do you have a process? Are you a sit down and write? Is it a spare of the moment, random thought type situation?
In the past, before I sustained a wrist injury, I would pick up my guitar and I would start to play, and then the song would fall out at the same time. So I would start playing, a melody would come to me, but the words would start to flow. So the melody and the words always worked together at first, and that would happen for the first verse and chorus, and then I would plug in the lyrics for the second verse. But since I sustained a wrist injury, I haven't been able to play, but I have kept writing. So I've had to kind of change my approach with it, and I'm experimenting with different things because right now, only as of recently, I've been allowed to play the guitar again and instruments again, but I'm on a limited schedule, so I can only play for 20 minutes a day. And obviously, if you're going to sit down and write a song and you have your guitar out the whole time, it's going to take you a heck of a lot longer than 20 minutes to finish. So it would take a long time. So right now, I'm finding that I kind of find the melody that I want, and then I'm trying to plug the lyrics in after I write the melody and the chorus. And it's interesting and it's challenging for me that way because I find it harder, but it's probably because I'm just not practiced. I find it harder to find lyrics that match the melody if I don't write them at the same time as the melody. Yeah. But it's an interesting exercise for sure.
Is it difficult to not just use those 20 minutes in your day to just have a bit of a sing-along on some other stuff rather than think, right, I want to actually be productive with this?
Yeah, it is. It's really, really hard. It's really hard. And to be honest, I've been probably pushing it. I think I need to have a timer because I've been pushing it, but yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to not go overboard when you haven't done it in so long. So.
Yeah. If you could have written one song throughout the history of music, what would it be?
Ooh.
I like this question just for me, I think.
Oh,
and that
what a beautiful one. Oh, no. Oh, there's so many. Oh, it's so hard because then it's like, is it recent or past or all, but it's all together. It has to be all together. The greatest song.
Oh. Or even one you just think of and wish, you just wish you wrote, where you think, if I only wrote that, I would be happy.
Oh my word. I can't, I am having such a hard time. I'm going to go with the classic past, and I'm going to say At Last.
Etta James.
Etta James, because I just think that's phenomenal in the melody and the lyrics and just the emotion that goes into that song.
It's such a cross-genre song as well, isn't it? It can fit for so many different, the amount of artists I've heard sing that song where you just wouldn't expect. It just fits. Good choice. Good choice.
Thank you.
That's not one you're going to sit down later and think, that's the wrong answer.
No, you can't do
on this show, I'm always interested in discussing different ways artists promote and market their stuff. Now, I don't know how to say it. A Patreon, is that how you pronounce it?
I think honestly, I've never heard it said out loud.
This whole show is just us trying to pronounce things. I think it's like that.
I think it might be Patreon, but that could just be Canadian pronunciation. So let's go with that.
Either way, for people that don't know what it is, it's a place for artistic people like musicians, photographers, and stuff to deliver content. For a fan base in exchange for, they're called like micro donations or something, aren't they? What made you decide to go down that route? I love it. What was the decision?
Thank you. My decision for going down this route was honestly sitting down with my husband and having a conversation about our future goals and when we plan to buy a house and how on earth we're going to be able to ever afford it. Because to be honest, if we gave up music today, we could have a house in a realistic amount of time. How much money we're pouring into music. And I don't believe it's anybody's responsibility but our own to fund our own musical projects. Like, I don't believe I'm entitled to any free money to make music. That's not what this is about. But the problem is that it takes an army, and if we continue to make music at the same rate that we've been making music and release it at the same rate we've been releasing it, it's not sustainable. We won't be able to continue doing it. And we're either going to have to make sacrifices for our music or sacrifices for our family, which means when we start a family, if we start a family, where we end up living, are we going to have a house? Or are we going to rent forever? And Patreon kind of is something I tried to do a couple of years ago, but I never actually promoted it. So I started it. My mom was the only subscriber, and then I didn't do anything with it. And that was about 4 years ago. And then this year I had a bunch of people say, why don't you try Patreon? Why don't you try Patreon? And I think I needed the time to establish myself as an artist, to prove that I am releasing music regularly without the financial help of other people. So even if I only have 5 people sign up, I'm still going to be putting out the content and still providing the value to the people who have signed up, because I am self-funded right now. But eventually I'm hoping this will turn into something where I'm providing enough valuable content and entertaining content to people who subscribe that I'll have enough patrons on Patreon to actually fund the music that we're creating on a regular basis. Because we write enough music. It's not a matter of, do we write enough music? We have enough songs to produce these songs and put them forward. It's just the cost and the time involved, and it's hard to do. So Patreon is a monthly subscription, and you can sign up, and basically you can sign up for different tiers. And every tier offers you different things. So there's our first tier starts at £3, and for that you get behind the scenes content, which other people don't get, which is right now we've posted lyrics to songs that nobody's seen before, nobody's heard. And then it goes all the way up to tiers where people can hear the songs before they're released. So if we have a new single coming out in a month and we're sending it out to press, then if they're subscribed to that tier, they'll get the new single the 3 or 4 weeks before anybody else in the world gets a single. So it's a really cool platform that allows you to limit the audience you're showing your material to, which is great, because one of my biggest frustrations with being a songwriter is having a new song and thinking, oh, I have to sit on this, I can't show anybody it yet, because we have to have a concept for how we're going to release it, and we have to strategically plan to make the most out of it. But this way we get to actually just go into Patreon and go, wrote a new song, here's the hook, here's the lyrics, hey, come into the it's great. It's like having a family. So I'm very excited to be on it.
I suppose it gives you you get a good idea of how many sort of loyal or avid fans you've got. But also I think it's important for people to understand that you do need to monetize what you do. I think it's a very upfront and honest way of doing it.
Oh, so I think it's so important, because a lot of people, the thing is, I know that not everybody's going to have money to do it, and that's not what I'm expecting. We're not going to limit what we post on socials. I'll always post on socials, but I'm just going to be offering more than what I've been offering on socials on Patreon, a lot more on Patreon for those who can, because music does cost money, and I just don't think people really think about it, but it costs a lot of money. It really does. Even the subscription to the websites that we're a part of to fund our musical opportunities, or things that people don't think about, are how much it costs to put your music forward to be considered for an award. It costs a membership, and it costs per song that you apply for an award, it's a $30 fee. And if you make an album and you want to put your album forward, you could be paying 8 times 30, you could be paying $240 just to have it considered for an award, which is just it's crazy, but people just don't see that side of the music industry. So I hope this kind of helps bridge that gap.
I think the amount of live streams and stuff people are doing at the moment, which are amazing, and obviously they provide a valuable source. I can't help but think, I've seen a lot of artists are starting to test the paid gig sort of arena, which I think is going to be, they're going to have to, because we could be in this for a while. So I've seen some bigger acts have started doing fully multi-camera production stuff. So yeah, it's definitely cool. A great idea.
That's really cool.
But that costs as well, I imagine. Nothing is free.
Nothing is free. No.
But, on top of that, on sort of good money earners, I guess, you've got some amazing merch.
Oh, thank you.
So you've got a cassette. I love that. You can buy Joey's album on cassette and vinyl, which makes sense now with your love of vinyl. How do you go about getting that kind of stuff made? Where do you get cassettes?
So we went to, I think it's called Band CDs, and they offered CDs and cassette. And not only did they offer CDs and cassette, but they offered the gold foil printing, which was super important to us for this release. So we went with them. I only got 20 cassettes printed, and I don't know if they'll ever print anymore. So if anybody does order those, they are really limited edition. I just wanted to have something on cassette, because anybody who's
I like that.
Our age will appreciate how important cassettes were when we were kids. The vinyl, was a journey, because obviously we don't have like an art team. We had a phenomenal photographer, Arthur Walwyn, who did our cover shot, and he did the album art. And then he designed it, thank goodness. He did all of like the photo editing to make it the way that it is and make it look like I'm see-through. I don't know what translucent. That's the one. Translucent on that road, kind of ghost-like. And then we did the font and then the design for it. And there's just so many things that you don't think about as an artist. When you think, I want to put my stuff on vinyl, you don't think about, oh, of course, I'm going to be the one to proof all of the details on it. And I have to space everything out perfectly and pick the font for the dedication. And it was a lot of work, but it was so worth it. We got those printed in Poland at a place called WM Phono. And again, it was because they were one of the places that I could find that offered the gold foil stamp printing, which was really, really important to us, because the font that's on the front of our album is the closest that we could find to the British passport font. And so we wanted it gold foil stamped so that it would look like the British passport font. So
that is some detail. I like that.
that's why we went with that and went a bit over the top. And we had it remastered for vinyl at Abbey Road, which was a completely incredible experience. But it's something, again, you don't really think when you think, I want to have my stuff printed on vinyl. You just think, oh, I just send the files and they print it. But it's not the same. You have to have it remastered, obviously, so that it sounds the best that it can on vinyl. And any independent artists out there who are thinking of doing it, I highly recommend.
It's worth it just so you can say your album remastered at Abbey Road. That alone would do it.
It was, I mean, that experience was so cool because I chose to do it not knowing that it was going to be an in-person experience. I thought that you would I thought that you had to pay more for that. So I didn't plan to go at all. And then I found out the day before, they emailed me, and my cousin and her boyfriend were staying with us at the time. They emailed me the night before and said, so can you please send us a list of the people who will be attending the mix session? You can only bring up to 3, or you can only bring up to 2 people and also yourself. And I was like, wait a second, in-person mix. And they're like, yep, there can be 3 of you. And Peter was at work, so unfortunately he didn't get to go.
Oh, no.
But I got to take my cousin and her boyfriend, and it happened to be on the Beatles' anniversary of their album on the day it was relaunched. So it was swamped with people trying to get into the studios, and we felt like total rock stars getting to go up to the gate, showing our ID and then going in. It was amazing.
Amazing. Have you heard, I'm assuming you've heard it on vinyl. Does it sound different?
The Abbey Roads.
No, your album.
Oh, our album. Yeah, you know what? It sounds a bit haunting. I really like, there's one particular track on there that honestly is the reason that we really went vinyl. Like, I knew I wanted vinyl, but Over You starts with this haunted piano sound at the beginning. And we never planned on having that there. We had the vocal mic set up in the live room, and I had just finished tracking vocals, and we were getting the keyboard to set up so that my cousin could play kind of synth padding and like a few keys throughout the song. But she was warming up on the piano downstairs, which was not tuned. And Ryan hit record while she was warming up the piano part. And we just let her roll and didn't tell her we were finished setting up in the other room. And we were just like, by the time she kind of wandered in and was like, okay, I'm warmed up. And we're like, actually, I don't think we need you for anything else because we just recorded you doing that. And so we put the beautiful, haunting, creeping piano part at the beginning. And then at the end of the song to kind of outro it. And I knew that was just going to sound so spooky on vinyl. And it really does. That sounds so much stronger. And there's just more depth to it. It's really eerie. I love it.
Nice. You touched on it at the start of the interview, but talk to me about the importance of the UK country scene for you as a community.
I honestly think it's such a cool scene here. I think it's incredible. It's not just the musicians who are a part of it, but if we were just talking musicians, I would still be impressed with it, because you can just tweet anybody and they reply, or they like the things you tweet, and if people are supportive, if there's an opportunity, they share it. They don't hoard it. It's really cool to be part of that. But then on top of that, we have this incredible community of like country music bloggers and podcasters and review sites, and just this it really is just the truest sense of community, where everybody helps each other out, everybody sends each other other directions to help them grow. And I think Canada has it, but I don't think Canada is big enough to offer what the community here offers.
Yeah.
Because I think that in Canada, it's different because we're divided by provinces.
Yeah.
So it's very much like the country music community in BC, and then the country music community in Alberta. And then if you get to a certain level outside, like if you're at the top tier of those provincial levels, then you might start networking with the people across the different provinces. At least this is what it was like when I was in Canada. But here, I feel like it's all one. It's not divided into several smaller parts that then build up. Yes, we live in different places like Dorset and London, but everybody is open to helping everybody out, which is really cool.
Nice. So what's next for you? Are you working on another album, or are you focusing on writing? What's the plan?
We are focusing right now on singles at the moment.
Okay.
And that's mostly because we wrote some songs that we really want to put out, but they don't really, we're kind of just exploring with sounds right now. My husband and I, so Peter and I wrote a song that we're going to be releasing in combination with another country artist in the UK, a band in the UK that we're really excited about. That's going to be out next month. But we wanted to take this time to kind of like explore the sounds and push the boundaries.
Yeah.
When we wrote The Year That Never Happened and we put together that album, we really wanted it to sonically make sense.
Yeah.
And also I had a very clear image of how I wanted it to sound, which isn't necessarily how I want to sound for the rest of my life, but it was really important to me that those songs sounded that way, because that's how the emotion felt to me. And now that that's been tied up nicely and distributed and sent out to the world, I just feel like there's so much exploring to do sonically that we can do. And so that's why we released the If You Want Me To and a Princess Diaries sound. And when we released my dad's song, again, I felt like I had to go more honest with it, which is why we used more organic and kind of traditional instruments. In the next one we're releasing, I'm super excited about it. It's like kind of a summery road trip anthem.
Oh, nice.
And I'm really excited for it. And it definitely involves my husband wrote the bass line for it. And when he wrote the bass line, we actually wrote the whole song to his bass line and laid down the demo only to a bass, which is something I've never done before.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. But because of that, it's very heavily influenced by like the songs that he grew up listening to, which is awesome. So it's kind of like country music meets like almost Blink 182, which is really cool. Love and that. Fun. Yeah. So we're just exploring sounds right now.
The way you were talking about would want to put together an album sounds very much like how I know Casey Musgraves works, especially with Golden Hour. That's similar sort of thing, isn't it? I think the Silver Seas, I think, is the producer on that one. But that is very much, that's got a sound, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like that has a sound, and it's an incredible album, which is probably why it won all the Grammys. So many awards. Is to win.
It's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I do. So I end all interviews like this. Every single one, no matter who it is, 2 questions.
Okay.
Often people find them the hardest.
I always do.
If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably pizza.
Everyone picks carb. Everyone.
Yeah.
Pizza, pasta, lasagna.
Yeah.
Most common options.
I think so. My husband and I have a really bad addiction with pizza. Like we had to make a meal plan for the week so that we would make sure we would only have pizza once a week because we have no self-control.
How much pizza are you having?
More than one a week for sure. It was like our favorite place to vacation is definitely Italy, and that's because you can actually sometimes have pizza twice a day and nobody will judge you. Nobody. Pizza and red wine twice a day, no judgment. It's great.
And lastly, if you could only drink one drink, it can be alcoholic, it can be non-alcoholic, or both. You can pick.
Ooh. Do we still get water if we pick a different thing other than water?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have to say, honestly, tea, because even before I moved over here, like we grew up on having
British tea.
British tea with, that's it, because that's what my household, we always had the kettle on. It was always on. That's my mom always had tea on. And I don't think I could live without it.
What?
I know.
Okay.
It's a comfort thing. Like we have like at least in my house, I think it's because my grandma was British. My grandma would always have the tea on. And my mom used to tell stories actually of like they'd have guests over and they would run out of milk and my mom would have to go into the milking parlor and she'd have to like milk the cow or milk a sheep and not tell anybody it was the sheep milk and then serve tea up. So I think that's why we always had tea on, and I don't think I could creatively, like I always have a cup of tea when I'm writing, so I think it would be weird to not have it.
Good choice. Good choice. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on, Joey. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me and chatting
You're
with
welcome.
me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Joey Clarkson there. Loved that. I have to say thanks to Laura Jenkins from Your Forte for sorting that one out for me, and of course to Joey for being so generous with her time. You can find Joey Clarkson's social media links, tour dates and her merch store there, which is full of good stuff, at joeyclarkson.com. Her new single, Can I Have This Dance, is out now and is available in all good streaming locations. If you like what you heard on this pod, please do like, follow, subscribe, review, share, all that good stuff. It really does help. If you want, you can contact the show on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, or you can email totalcountrypod@gmail.com. I think that would do for now. My guest next week is Nashville-based singer-songwriter Carl Elliott. He's given me one of his first UK interviews ahead of the UK release of his new single. So join me here next week, same time, same place. Stay safe, keep it country. Bye for now.